So if you clicked on this video, you should have read the title. Welcome, I'm happy you're here. So this video essay will be about Bleach and the manga written by Tite Kubo. I keep noticing and hearing a lot of confusion among Reddit users about the series, so I'd like to make this so I can talk about Bleach in a safe and productive way. People do get confused a lot about what the series is about, or the characters in the series, so I made this video to explore it and address the confusions and misunderstandings that people might have. The story is about Ichigo and the themes of identity, balance, and self-discovery through Ichigo himself. Ichigo is the main protagonist of Bleach, defined by his role as a soul protector in his lineage. He's the son of Isshin Shiba, former Soul Reaper, and Masasaki Kurosaki, a pure-blooded Quincy, not a Soul Reaper. This distinction is important as it forms the foundation of who Ichigo is. He's an interesting character. He's a human, a Soul Reaper, a Quincy, and a Hollow. This combination came around when his mother was exposed to hollowification, a process involving the combination of a Hollow and a Soul Reaper, which can drive you insane. As a result, Ichigo gained quirks that put him at the center of the series' core moral conflict, the battle between good and evil. Rukia Kuchiki is one of the central characters in Bleach and serves as the catalyst for Ichigo's journey. Rukia originally trained at the Shino Academy and became a Soul Reaper, eventually joining the 13th Division under Captain Joshiro Ukirataki. She gave her powers to Ichigo at the start of the series, effectively making him a substitute Soul Reaper and guiding him through his journey. After she gave her powers to Ichigo to save his family from a hollow named Fishbone D, she was forced to live in a human world as a normal high school student. She lived in his closet while also teaching him to live as a Soul Reaper and fight the hollows. And as a result, they developed a close friendship. So there's Orohime Inoue, one of the main characters in Bleach. She's interests of Ichigo. Orohime herself is not a Soul Reaper. She's a spiritually aware human whose powers came around through the Shunshin Rika, 6 fairies housed in hairpins. While she's associated with the Fullbringers, her powers are unique and not fully identical to a normal Fullbringer. Rather than actual combat, her powers focus on changing events. She can heal injuries, restore objects, and reject events that have already happened. And of course, we'll talk about perhaps everyone's fan favorite girl, Yorichi. She was introduced as a talking black cat, but was later revealed as the former captain of the 2nd Division and the former commander of the Stealth Force in the Soul Society. Yorichi helped in training Ichigo and his friends Orohime and Chad at the shop of Urahara. She guided them through the process of entering the Soul Society, and most importantly, taught Ichigo during the Soul Society storyline, where she taught him to gain Bankai in an incredibly short period of time to allow him to stand on equal footing with the Soul Reapers. And of course, there's one of the most famous villains in all of anime manga history, Sasuke Aizen, the primary villain of Bleach and one of the greatest villains of all time. Aizen famously planned his own betrayal, including killing all the Central 46, but ordering the execution of Rukia Kuchiki and even faking his own death to operate from the shadows. His ultimate aim was to gain the Hogyoku, a weapon created by Kisasagi Urahara, and use its power to transcend the limits of the Soul Reaper and overthrow the Soul King, who he saw as an unworthy ruler of reality. Aizen's influence extended far beyond open conflict. He is actually responsible for creation of Ichigo himself, after creating the Hollow White and infected Ichigo's mother. Through this, Aizen observed and changed events in Ichigo's life, treating him as a subject in an unfair experiment rather than a real opponent. Ewok is the primary villain of Bleach 1000-Year Blood War and the creator of all the Quincy. He is the former emperor of the Wandering Reich and the son of the Soul King, to embody the idea of destiny and the collapse of existing order. Ewok was born with the ability to distribute fragments of his soul onto others. Those who received these fragments gained power, but after their death, their strength, knowledge, and power would come back to him. Through this, Ewok continuously grew stronger, gaining the experience and powers of countless individuals. Kisasuke Urahara is the most important supporting character in Bleach. He is the former captain of the 12th Division, the Gotei 13, where his lieutenant was Hiyori Soragaki. Urahara gained a shop in the human world selling Shinigami items where he continues his research and helps Ichigo and his friends. He plays an important role in teaching Ichigo, helping him regain and develop his powers as a Soul Reaper. Urahara is the creator of the Hogyoku, the weapon that, as I said earlier, was previously stolen by Aizen. So now that I'm done with the main character of Bleach, I'm gonna move on to a different section. So there's Reiatsu, which is the physical manifestation of a person's spiritual energy in Bleach. It reflects your overall power and can influence both the environment and individuals. Stronger Reiatsu can intimidate and paralyze a weaker opponent. It can cause direct physical damage simply by you being there, and it can determine the outcome of a battle without actual combat. Reiatsu is directly tied to a character's emotions, state of mind, and identity, meaning it changes depending on their confidence and inner conflict. Because of this, it's not just a measure of strength, it's a reflection of who you are as a character. There's Ryoko, which is the inside spiritual energy that exists in a being. It's a source of your power and is used to perform abilities like fighting, using techniques, and activating your Zanpakuto. Unlike Ryoko is simply the raw energy in the body. And the amount of control Ryoko determines how strong the character can be. Zanpakuto is the primary weapon of a Soul Reaper. It's not just a sword, it's the manifestation of the soul. It has its own name, personality, and unique abilities. Every Zanpakuto is different. It reflects the identity and inner nature of the wielder. Every Zanpakuto is an inside spirit that the user can communicate with. No two Zanpakuto are the same. Its power grows as the wielder grows. Shikai is the initial release form of Soul Reaper Zanpakuto. It unlocks their weapon's abilities and marks the start of a Soul Reaper's full power. It's the start of the original transformation of a Zanpakuto. It's activated by calling out the sword's name and command. It grants special powers unique to the Soul Reaper and reflects the wielder's personality and fighting style. To achieve a Shikai user must learn the name of the Zanpakuto, communicate with the spirit, and form a bond with it. And then there's Bankai, the final and most powerful form of Soul Reaper Zanpakuto. It represents complete synchronization between the user and the source spirit to unlock their full potential. It is the second release form after the Shikai, requiring incredible training and mastery. It grants you an incredible increase in power, speed, and abilities unique to that user. But to achieve Bankai, a Soul Reaper must not only materialize as Zanpakuto, they must subdue, understand, and form a deep bond with it, similar to a Shikai. And of course, lastly, this is the Quincy. They're a group of spiritually aware humans in Bleach who have the ability to manipulate spiritual particles called Reishi to create weapons and fight the Hollows. Unlike Soul Reapers who purify a soul, Quincy's erase hollows completely that disrupt the balance between the worlds. Unlike the Shinigami, Quincy are not dead souls. They are alive human beings. They're also human, but they use Reishi to fight at long range, and a special ability is called Shrift, which was given to them by Ewok. There are two kinds of Quincy: X or pure bloods, and stronger with traditional lineage, and mixed blood or gamish shit that are more common and less privileged. A Shrift is a special ability given to a Quincy by Ewok and Bleach. Each Shrift is represented by the letter of the alphabet, and every letter corresponds to a single power. How it works is Ewok will give you a Quincy a letter like A, B, and C. That letter will unlock a special ability tied to the soul that affects the individual's nature and role. For example, A stands for the Almighty, Ewok's ability to see and change the future. The main idea is that shifts are not random powers and represent the Quincy's inner traits given by Ewok. It defines the strength and role of a Quincy to show Ewok's own control and increase the own control over his army. So I have seen this question been asked a lot. Can Ewok create superpowers from nothing? No. Ewok cannot create abilities from nothing. He awakens and increases the abilities that exist inside a person by giving them a Shrift. Think like this. He gives you fragments of his soul to others, and this awakens the potential inside them. But the shrift doesn't assign a power. It draws out and defines a power inside the Quincy. He cannot invent powers. He unlocks them, he shapes them, he cannot create them. It looks like he creates them because the abilities are extremely specific, like B for the balance, or M for the miracle, and they only come around after he gives you the shrift. Ewok does have control over the process, where he cannot give you power. He decides who gets that power, he decides who takes back that power, and he can redistribute that power, but he cannot create it. Now that we're done with the terminology of Bleach, I feel that we can move on to the cosmology of Bleach. There are 8 different dimensions in Bleach. So I'll move on to the first one, which is the living world. It's one of the 3 primary realms in Bleach that exists alongside the Soul Society and the Hueco Mundo. It represents the physical world where humans live out their lives before they die. The world of the living is made of physical matter called Kishi. Within the system, the world of the living serves as the starting point of the soul cycle, as when humans die, they become ghosts called a plus. The souls are either guided to the Soul Society by Soul Reapers through a console or soul burial, or if they're left unchecked, will transform into a hollow, mass creatures that are made of human souls that didn't cross over into the Soul Society and stayed in the human. So the Soul Society is the second of the 3 primary dimensions of Bleach that serves as the afterlife where souls live after leaving the living world. It exists as a spiritual structured realm governed by the Soul Society, Reapers who maintain balance by guiding souls and purifying the hollows. Inside the system, it functions as a place of transition where souls live and are actually reincarnated into the living world. The Soul Society is developed in 2 areas, the Seireitai, where the Soul Reapers live, and the Rungongai, where normal souls live. So the Hueco Mundo is the 3rd of the primary realms in Bleach that exists as a single night-colored dimension inhabited by the hollows and Aranka. Inside the system, it functions as a domain of corrupted souls, those who, rather than passing on, transform the hollows due to lingering attachment, regret, and loneliness. The environment of the Hueco Mundo reflects its inhabitants. It's a vast white desert with an endless night sky and a sense of emptiness. So the Danga is a dimensional space that exists between the living world and the Soul Society. Rather than being a dimension where anybody lives, it functions as a transit corridor used by soul reapers to travel between the 2 worlds. Unlike the normal realms, the Danga itself is unstable and dangerous. Time flows differently inside it that allows for increased trading under specific conditions, as shown with Ichigo and Mugetsu. However, it's also inhabited by beings like the Kotototsu, a character that punishes those who disrupt the flow of time in the space. So there's the Giganta. It's a dimensional pathway in Bleach used by the Hollows and Aranka to travel between the realms, especially between the Hueco Mundo and the living world. Unlike the Dangai, the Giganta is a void-like space that must be manually opened by ripping through dimensions. When activated, the Giganta appears as a black rift in space that leads into a dark, unstable dimensions. Users have to create actual footholds made of rishi underneath them to move through it, as there's no actual ground in there. The Royal Palace is a separate elevated dimension that exists above the Soul Society in Bleach. It serves as the home of the Soul King, the being responsible for maintaining the balance between all the realms. It exists in a separate higher plane of reality and can only be reached with specific methods typically reserved for the strongest Soul Reapers. It's protected by Squad Zero, aka the Royal Guard, who are tasked with defending the Soul King and preserving the balance of reality. The palace itself is composed of multiple floating cities that each belong to a single member of the Royal Guard. The Royal Palace is central to the structure of the entire universe, as the Soul King acts as the linchpin that holds the 3 realms, the living world, Soul Society, and Hueco Mundo together. So Hell is a separate, mysterious place in Bleach. It's different from the 3 primary realms. It's a place where souls who have committed great sins during their human lives are sent after they die, rather than entering the cycle of reincarnation. Unlike the Soul Society, which maintains balance and order, hell exists outside the system as a form of punishment and containment. Souls sent there are bounded by chains and turned into beings called sinners, indefinitely imprisoned as a consequence of their actions in life. Hell isn't governed the same way as the other realms and remains completely unexplored, adding to its mysterious nature. However, its existence reinforces the idea that not every soul is given a second chance in life and in death. So the Valley of Screams is the lesser known, unstable place in Bleach that exists outside the realms. It is home when a gathering of lost and displaced souls, those who weren't guided through life and death. Unlike the structured worlds like the Soul Society and Hueco the Valley of Screams is chaotic and fragmented. It's made of shattered pieces of space and spiritual matter that creates an environment that's constantly shifting and unstable. Because it exists outside the normal balance maintained by the Soul King, the Valley of Screams represents a flaw in the system. And lastly, we have Reverse London. It's a hidden parallel dimension introduced in the tie-in series Burn the Witch. It represents the western branch of Soul Society that exists separate from the eastern system shown in the main series. Unlike the Soul Society in Bleach, which deals with souls in the afterlife, Reverse London focuses entirely on managing dragons, spiritual creatures invisible to normal humans that can pose great danger if left unchecked. This group is governed by another group called the Wingbind, which are responsible for controlling dragons in the realm. Reverse London exists alongside the normal city of London, but is hidden from the actual population, much how spiritual worlds in Bleach are invisible to most humans. Alright, so this is the list of Bankai. There are many Bankais. Actually, there are over 30 of them, and countless more. But these 5 are the most famous ones. The first is Tansa Zangetsu, which compresses power for extreme speed and precision. The second is Senbon Zakura Kagayoshi, which allows for thousands of blade-like petals to attack from every side. The third is Haka no Togami, which freezes everything to absolute zero. The fourth is Zanka no Tochi, which allows you to concentrate incredible firepower into a blade of overwhelming heat. The fifth is Taiguran Hoyoran Maru, which allows you to manipulate ice and mature into a complete form. And the last is Katen Koyokotsu Galanamatsu Shinju, which allows you to alter reality into a deadly play with tragic stages. So overall, I think that Bleach is more than just a story about battles, magic, and supernatural. It's also about identity and balance. Through its 8 worlds in the living world to Soul Society, it shows you a careful universe where every realm, power, and character all play a role in maintaining or changing balance. At the center of it all is Ichigo, whose journey reflects that struggle to understand himself in a world defined by conflicting forces. What made Bleach especially compelling to me is how its power systems are tied to that personal growth. And I also find it relatable because it reflects the idea that identity isn't fixed, but it can evolve, it's something that changes over time. Like Ichigo, who's a blend of 4 worlds that struggles to find one where he belongs. That series really captures the challenge of coming to terms with yourself while you move forward in life. And in the end, Bleach stands out not just for its actions and world building, but its ability to show you who the characters really are.